The bridge of the big spaceship called Harmony's Light was shaking very hard. Red lights were flashing everywhere and everyone was scared. Admiral Corvin stood in the middle of the bridge, his crystal body changing colors from the warning lights. He looked at the big screen that showed their battle. The enemy ships were everywhere. Red dots covered the screen like an infection. Blue dots that showed their own ships were getting smaller and smaller. They were losing this fight badly. "Sir, we lost contact with the Third Fleet," said his communications officer. The officer had long tentacles that moved quickly over his controls. He looked very worried. "The swarm has broken through our outer defense line." Admiral Corvin felt sick. The consuming swarm had been attacking them for 3 whole years. They had lost so many battles that he could not count them all. The enemy was like nothing they had ever seen before. They ate entire worlds and turned everything into more of themselves. "What news from the Vorthak Empire?" Corvin asked, but he already knew what the answer would be. "The same answer as always, sir. They are running away to their home planets. Emperor Vorthak VII says that if the ancient warriors from the old stories were still alive, they would have appeared by now." Corvin knew those stories well. Every child in the galaxy grew up hearing them. They were tales about mythical humans from a world called Earth. The stories said these humans could survive in places that would kill anyone else. They fought with simple weapons but had impossible courage. They had disappeared from the galaxy a very long time ago. Children loved these bedtime stories about the legendary Terrans who could run for days without stopping. The stories said they felt no fear in battle and would protect the weak with wild determination. But these were just pretty stories to help children sleep at night. They were not real and could not help them now. "Admiral," his science officer said suddenly. Her voice sounded very confused. "We are detecting unknown ships coming from the Sol system." Corvin turned around quickly. His crystal body caught the light and threw rainbow patterns on the walls. "The Sol system? That place has been dead for thousands of years. Nothing lives there except radiation and broken rocks. That is what our records say, sir. But these ships do not match anything in our computer database." The main screen changed to show fuzzy sensor readings. Slowly, the image became clearer and showed something impossible. Dozens of ships were coming toward them. The ships looked crude and rough compared to the smooth lines of their own vessels. They were built from processed metals instead of the living materials that advanced civilizations preferred. "Sir," the communications officer whispered, "we are getting a transmission. Audio only. The language is not in our translation computer. Put it through anyway." Static filled the bridge. Then a voice came through. It was harsh and determined. The voice spoke in patterns that somehow made sense even though they could not understand the words. "This is Captain Lee Daehyun of the Earth Defense. Force Vessel Inchin's Pride. Galactic Confederacy ships. Please respond on emergency frequencies. We have been watching your distress signals." Corvin's crystal body went completely clear with shock. All around the bridge, his officers looked at each other in disbelief. "Earth Defense Force," Corvin whispered. "That is impossible." The transmission continued. "We know this is a surprise. Our species has been watching galactic affairs for some time, but circumstances now require us to make contact. We understand you are facing a threat called the consuming swarm. We are here to help." Before Corvin could answer, alarms started screaming throughout the ship. The swarm had found them. "Hostile contacts coming out of hyperspace," his tactical officer reported. "Swarm bioships, at least 50 of them. They are moving to surround us." On the screen, the nightmare shapes of swarm vessels appeared. They looked like living ships that glowed with organic light. Their surfaces moved like they were alive, covered with acid that could eat through any known hull material. The Confederacy had never won a single fight against them. That was when something amazing happened. The unknown human ships flew straight toward the swarm formation. Their rough-looking weapons started charging with strange energy. Captain Lee's voice came through the comm again. He sounded calm and determined. "Confederacy vessels, fall back to a safe distance. We will handle this." What happened next was impossible to believe. It changed everything Corvin thought he knew about fighting, courage, and what was possible in battle. The human ships dove into the swarm formation like hunters attacking prey. Their weapons fired devastating attacks that seemed to target swarm weak points that no Confederacy scientist had ever found. But it was not just their technology that was shocking. It was how they acted. Confederacy ships always kept careful formations and safe distances. The human vessels fought like wild animals. They rammed damaged enemies and used their own ships as weapons when they ran out of ammunition. They showed a level of aggressive determination that seemed completely insane. Corvin watched in stunned silence as Captain Lee's ship took heavy damage. Atmosphere was leaking from holes in the hull, but the ship deliberately rammed itself into the biggest swarm bioship. Some kind of massive bomb exploded and destroyed both ships. The explosion also took out 3 other enemy ships. When the fight ended 15 minutes later, the swarm force was completely destroyed. The cost to the humans looked terrible. They had lost almost half their ships and thousands of crew members. But the surviving human vessels grouped together with military precision. New transmissions started coming through on different frequencies. "This is Dr. Kim Yuna aboard the research vessel Soul's Hope. Is anyone receiving this transmission? We need to establish formal first contact protocols immediately." Corvin finally found his voice. "This is Admiral Corvin of the Galactic Confederacy. I thought your species was extinct. How is this possible?" There was a pause. Then a different voice came through. It was female and carried hints of tiredness but also clear authority. "Admiral Corvin, that is a long story, but the short version is that the reports of our extinction were greatly exaggerated. My name is Dr. Kim Yuna, and I represent the United Earth government. We have been watching the galaxy for a very long time, waiting for the right moment to reveal ourselves. And this is that moment? The consuming swarm represents a threat to all biological life in the galaxy. We have encountered similar entities before, in other regions of space. If they are not stopped here, they will eventually consume everything." Corvin's crystal body pulsed with confused light patterns. "Other regions of space? How far does your territory extend?" Another pause. "Admiral, I think we need to meet in person. There are things about human history and our current capabilities that your people need to understand. But I will say this. The stories your ancestors told about us were not entirely accurate." "In what way?" Dr. Kim's voice carried something that might have been dark amusement. "We were never as primitive as the legends suggest, and we never went extinct. We have been growing stronger this entire time." As if to prove her point, Corvin's sensors detected new contacts coming from the Sol system. Not dozens of ships this time, hundreds all, broadcasting human identification codes and moving in formation with military precision that matched anything the Confederacy had ever achieved. Corvin realized that everything was about to change. The mythical humans were real, they were here, and they had come to fight a war that nobody else knew how to win. The question was, what else had the legends gotten wrong? The conference room on the big diplomatic station called New Harmony had been changed quickly to fit the first formal meeting between humans and the galactic community. Dr. Kim Yuna sat across from a collection of beings that represented the most advanced civilizations in known space, but she felt like she was the one being studied and examined. Admiral Corvin's crystal body threw shifting patterns of light across the polished table as he leaned forward. "Dr. Kim, your species' sudden appearance has caused significant problems with our understanding of galactic history." Beside him, Ambassador Threllis of the Aquatic Collective moved her gill slits nervously. "The historical records clearly state that Earth was made uninhabitable by solar radiation about 12,000 standard years ago. How do you explain your continued existence?" Kim Yuna had expected these questions, but telling humanity's true history still felt like a huge responsibility. She turned on a holographic display that showed the Sol system as it existed today. It was not the dead radiation zone of galactic records, but a thriving network of habitats, shipyards, and defensive installations. "The records of our extinction were deliberately encouraged," she said carefully. 12,000 years ago, humanity made a collective decision to withdraw from galactic affairs. We had observed patterns in interstellar politics that concerned us. What kind of patterns? This question came from General Makarov of the Vorthak Empire. His reptilian features showed keen interest. The rise and fall of dominant species. The tendency for advanced civilizations to become comfortable and lazy, to lose the edge that had made them strong in the first place. We saw what happened to the ancients and to the hegemony before them. We decided that rather than follow that path, we would step back, observe, and prepare. Corvin's light pattern shifted to deep purple, which meant confusion among his species. Prepare for what? Kim showed another hologram, this one displaying expanding red zones throughout the galaxy, for threats like the consuming swarm. In our studies of galactic history, we identified repeating patterns of existential crises that emerge roughly every 10 to 15,000 years. The swarm is just the latest version. Ambassador Threllis' tentacles curled with distress. You are saying you have been expecting this invasion? Not this specific threat, but something like it. Our withdrawal from galactic society was not retreat. It was preparation. While your civilizations focused on growth, prosperity, and cultural advancement, we spent 12,000 years doing something different. Which was? General Makarov demanded. Kim's expression became hard. Learning how to fight. The silence that followed was broken by the arrival of Commander Park Min-ho. He entered the conference room with the controlled movement of a career soldier. Kim had specifically requested his presence for this revelation. Commander Park represents our military doctrine, Kim continued. Perhaps he can explain better than I can. Park Min-ho turned on his own holographic display, showing tactical analyses of recent swarm encounters. The Galactic Confederacy's approach to warfare is based on defensive positioning, technological superiority, and minimal casualties. These are noble principles for conflicts between civilized species. He highlighted the complete destruction of the Third Fleet. They are completely inadequate against an enemy that views all biological matter as raw materials. Corvin's crystal body brightened with anger. We have developed the most advanced weapons and defensive systems in galactic history. Yes, Park agreed. And they are useless. Your plasma cannons cannot penetrate swarm bioarmor. Your shields collapse under acid bombardment. Your ships are designed for long-term sustainability, not expendable combat effectiveness. He switched to footage from the recent engagement, showing human ships ramming into swarm vessels. Human military doctrine developed differently. We never forgot that sometimes survival requires sacrifice. General Makarov studied the tactical data with professional interest. Your ships appear primitive by our standards, yet they achieved complete victory against superior numbers. How? Because we designed them to be replaceable, Park said bluntly. A Confederacy cruiser takes 50 years to build and is intended to last for centuries. A human destroyer takes 6 months to build and is designed to be effective for as long as it takes to complete its mission. Ambassador Threllis rippled with distress. You are describing a throwaway military philosophy. What about the crews? Kim and Park looked at each other. This was the part that would be hardest for the galactic community to understand. Our crews volunteer, Kim said quietly. Every human serving in the Defense Force understands that our survival as a species may depend on individual sacrifice. It is not a concept we expect other species to embrace, but it is fundamental to human military culture. That is barbaric, Threllis whispered. That is effective, Park corrected. Your people have spent thousands of years eliminating the harsh edges of existence. Humanity chose a different path. We kept those edges sharp. Corvin's crystal body had gone completely transparent, which meant deep shock among his people. You are describing a civilization that has spent 12,000 years preparing for war. Not just war, Kim corrected. Survival. There is a difference. She turned on another display, this one showing the true scope of human civilization. Orbital habitats around dozens of stars, hidden bases in asteroid fields, mobile fleets that could operate independently for decades. All of it was hidden by technology that made human installations invisible to standard galactic sensors. We have been watching and learning for 12,000 years, she continued. We know the strengths and weaknesses of every major galactic power. We have studied your technologies, your tactics, your cultural blind spots. We have been preparing not just to survive the next great crisis, but to ensure that something survives it. General Makarov's reptilian eyes became narrow. You have been spying on us. We have been preparing to help you, Kim replied. The consuming swarm is not just a threat to individual civilizations. It is a threat to the continuation of intelligent life in this galaxy. If we had remained hidden, eventually it would have consumed everything, including us. Commander Park stepped forward. Which brings us to why we are here now. The swarm's current expansion rate indicates that it will reach critical mass within 18 standard months. After that, it becomes unstoppable. What do you mean by critical mass? Corvin asked. The point at which it has consumed enough biological matter to replicate faster than any possible military response, Park explained. Based on our analysis, the swarm is currently at approximately 60% of that threshold. The meaning hung heavy in the recycled air of the conference room. What are you proposing? General Makarov finally asked. Kim Yuna straightened, and for the first time since the meeting began, she smiled. We are proposing to teach you how to fight a war you can actually win. She gestured to Park. who turned on a new tactical display showing human fleet movements throughout the galaxy. For the past 6 months, we have been positioning assets near major swarm concentrations. We have identified their primary hive clusters, their reproduction facilities, and their command nodes. We know how they think, how they move, and most importantly, how they die. Park's tactical projections showed a coordinated campaign unlike anything the galactic powers had ever attempted. This is not about defensive actions or holding territory. This is about total warfare aimed at complete elimination of the swarm threat. The cost in lives and resources will be enormous, Corvin said slowly. The cost of failure will be extinction, Kim replied. Not just for humanity, but for every intelligent species in the galaxy. She stood up. Her human form somehow commanded attention, despite being smaller than most beings in the room. The question is not whether you can afford to fight this war. The question is whether you can afford to fight it without us. General Makarov was the first to respond. What do you need from the Vorthak Empire? Everything, Park said simply. Ships, crews, industrial capacity, and the willingness to fight in ways you have never fought before. Ambassador Threllis spoke up reluctantly. The Aquatic Collective will need to consult our governing councils, but if what you are saying is true... It is true, Kim said firmly. And time is the one resource we cannot manufacture. Every day we delay, the swarm grows stronger. Corvin's crystal body pulsed with decision-making light patterns. Dr. Kim, if the Confederacy agrees to this alliance, what guarantee do we have that humanity will not become the next threat we need to face? Kim's smile faded. You have my word that humanity has no interest in galactic dominance. We learned long ago that empires inevitably fall. We are not here to build an empire. Then what are you here to build? Kim looked around the table at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. Crystal beings, aquatic creatures, reptilian forms, and dozens of other types that had evolved intelligence across the stars. Despite their vast differences, they all shared one thing. They were alive and they wanted to stay that way. A future, she said simply, for all of us. Outside the conference room, the first joint human-alien military planning session was already beginning. The real war was about to start. Commander Park Minho stood before the largest military gathering in galactic history. The strategic command center aboard the battle station Unity's Forge was buzzing with activity. Representatives from 17 different species were working together to coordinate their forces for humanity's first joint operation with the galactic community. The big holographic display at the center of the room showed the Kepler Nebula region. Swarm forces had built their largest known breeding facility there. Intelligence reports said that over 200 swarm bioships were actively converting captured worlds into new war vessels. The normal approach would be a siege, Park explained to the assembled military commanders. Surround the facility, cut off supply lines, and gradually wear down their defenses. This approach will fail. General Makarov of the Vorthak Empire studied the tactical projections with professional interest. His reptilian features showed doubt. Our combined fleet outnumbers their forces 3-1. Surely a coordinated assault will result in total defeat, Park interrupted. The swarm does not think like you do. They do not retreat when outnumbered. They do not save resources for future battles. They do not fear death because death, for them, is just another form of resource conversion. Admiral Corvin's crystal body reflected the tactical displays in colorful patterns. Then what do you recommend, Commander? Park gestured to Lieutenant Song Hyan, who turned on detailed sensor scans of the nebula region. Song had spent the past 2 months conducting reconnaissance deep in swarm territory. She used infiltration techniques that no galactic military had ever developed. Lieutenant Song has identified the facility's true weakness, Park continued. The swarm does not just breed new ships there. They maintain their primary genetic template storage. Song stepped forward. Her small form somehow radiated the confidence of someone who had survived impossible odds. The swarm operates on a hive mind principle, but they maintain genetic diversity through template libraries. Destroy the templates, and newly created swarm units lose adaptive capacity. She highlighted a specific structure deep within the facility complex. This biotower contains approximately 12 million years of evolutionary data. It is the foundation of their ability to adapt to new threats. Commander Vex of the Insectoid Union clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. If we destroy this facility, what prevents them from simply growing another? Time, Park answered. Rebuilding their template library would require them to reacquire genetic samples from every species they have ever encountered. That process would take decades, possibly centuries. Admiral Corvin pulsed with concerned light. The facility is protected by natural nebula phenomena that interfere with long-range sensors and communications. How do we coordinate an attack force under those conditions? Park's expression grew serious. We do not coordinate. We improvise. He turned on a new tactical display showing the human battle doctrine that had never been shared with galactic military academies. Human military strategy is based on adaptability under extreme conditions. We call it controlled chaos doctrine. The assembled commanders studied formations that looked nothing like traditional fleet movements. Instead of organized battle lines, human ships operated in small independent groups with overlapping mission parameters. Each group had broad authority to modify objectives based on battlefield conditions. This appears completely disorganized, General Makarov observed. That is the point, Park replied. The swarm's hive mind excels at countering organized, predictable attacks. They struggle against opponents who change tactics faster than the hive mind can adapt. Lieutenant Song turned on combat footage from recent human engagements. Individual human units are trained to operate independently when communications are compromised. Every ship captain understands the overall mission and has authority to pursue that mission through any means necessary. Engineer Choi Ji-won stepped forward to address the technical aspects. She had spent the past month working with alien shipyard crews to modify existing vessels for the new battle doctrine. We have been retrofitting your ships with human-designed weapon systems, she explained, not because our technology is superior, but because it is unpredictable. The swarm has never encountered kinetic slug throwers, chemical explosives, or electromagnetic pulse weapons. Commander Vex examined the technical specifications with professional interest. These weapons appear primitive compared to our energy-based systems. Primitive but effective, Choi confirmed. The swarm's bioarmor is specifically adapted to deflect plasma and particle beams. They have no defense against a 10-kilogram tungsten rod traveling at 30% of light speed. Admiral Corvin's form brightened with understanding. You are intentionally using inferior technology because the enemy has not evolved countermeasures. Exactly. Human military doctrine assumes that technological superiority is temporary. We maintain multiple technological approaches so that when one becomes obsolete, others remain effective. Park returned attention to the tactical display. The assault will begin in 6 hours. Human ships will enter the nebula first and begin engaging outer defenses. Our objective is to create maximum chaos and draw swarm attention away from the facility core. And our role? General Makarov inquired. Phase 2 begins when swarm forces commit to defending their perimeter. Confederacy and Vorthak ships will punch through the nebula's electromagnetic interference using modified shield harmonics. Your targets are the breeding chambers themselves. Song highlighted secondary objectives throughout the facility. Intelligence indicates that the swarm maintains approximately 300,000 captives from various species in bioconversion chambers. Any prisoners who can be rescued should be extracted. Commander Vex clicked mandibles in what his species considered dark humor. You are asking us to conduct a rescue operation while fighting for survival against overwhelming odds. We are asking you to fight like humans, Park replied simply. The comment drew surprised reactions from around the room. Among galactic military culture, fighting like humans had become synonymous with desperate, often suicidal tactics. Admiral Corvin's crystal body went completely transparent. Commander Park, are you aware of how other species perceive human combat doctrine? Yes, you think we are insane. And you are not concerned by this assessment? Park's expression was completely serious. Admiral, sane civilizations do not survive contact with the consuming swarm. We have studied the historical records. Every species that has faced this threat using conventional military wisdom has been completely destroyed. He gestured to the tactical display showing projected casualties for the upcoming assault. The numbers were staggering by galactic standards, but they were survivable. Human military culture developed on a world where everything was trying to kill us. Park continued. Extreme weather, dangerous predators, resource scarcity, and constant warfare between human tribal groups. We learned that survival sometimes requires tactics that rational beings consider unacceptable. Lieutenant Song turned on recordings from Earth's ancient history, footage of human military units charging fortified positions, pilots deliberately crashing damaged aircraft into enemy targets, and soldiers fighting to the death to protect civilian populations. This is how humans have always fought, Song explained. Not because we do not value life, but because we understand that some things are worth dying for. Engineer Choi added technical context. Our ship designs reflect this philosophy. Every human vessel can be converted into a kinetic weapon if necessary. Our crews are trained to view their own ships as expendable resources. General Makarov studied the tactical projections with growing understanding. You are not planning to capture the facility. You are planning to destroy it completely, regardless of cost. Correct, Park confirmed. Total destruction of swarm genetic templates is worth any price we might have to pay. The silence that followed was heavy, with the implications of what they were discussing. This was not a military engagement in the traditional sense. It was a calculated exchange of lives for strategic advantage. Admiral Corvin finally spoke. Commander, if we proceed with this assault, many of us will not survive. That is correct. And you believe this sacrifice is necessary? Park looked around the room at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. Despite their vast differences, they all shared the fundamental desire to continue existing. Admiral, I believe this sacrifice is the only path to survival, not just for humans but for intelligent life in this galaxy. He turned on a final display showing long-range projections of swarm expansion. Without intervention, the models showed complete galactic consumption within 18 months. The question is not whether some of us will die in this assault, Park said quietly. The question is whether anyone will be alive in 2 years if we do not make this attempt. Commander Vex was the first to respond. The Insectoid Union fleet will follow human tactical doctrine. General Makarov nodded grimly. The Vorthak Empire stands ready. Admiral Corvin's crystal body pulsed with decision-making patterns. The Galactic Confederacy will commit all available forces. Park felt a moment of unexpected emotion. These beings were choosing to trust human military wisdom, despite every instinct of their civilized societies. Then we launch in 6 hours, he announced, and we will show the consuming. The Kepler Nebula had never seen anything like the approaching fleet. Captain Lee Dae-hyun stood on the bridge of his flagship Incheon's Pride, watching sensors track the largest military formation in recorded galactic history. Ships from 17 different species moved in coordinated groups through the nebula's electromagnetic storms. Their hulls had been modified with human weapon systems and their crews trained in human tactical doctrine. Captain, reported his communications officer, we are receiving final position reports from all fleet elements. Total force strength is 473 capital ships, 812 support vessels, and approximately 2 million crew members. Lee nodded grimly. Intelligence projections suggested that fewer than half would survive the next 12 hours. Signal from Admiral Kang Sung-hwan. The officer continued. All human vessels report ready for combat operations. Through the bridge viewports, Lee could see the distinctive angular shapes of Earth Defense Force ships taking point positions. Unlike the elegant curves of Confederacy vessels or the bioorganic designs favored by other species, human ships looked exactly like what they were. Weapons designed for a single purpose. Captain, his tactical officer reported. Passive sensors are detecting massive swarm movement throughout the facility. They know we are coming. The holographic display showed the enemy response. Hundreds of bioships were emerging from breeding chambers. Their organic hulls pulsed with aggressive bioluminescence. The swarm had evolved specifically for this kind of warfare, and they were eager for combat. All ships, this is Captain Lee, he announced over fleet communications. Remember your training. The enemy expects organized formations and predictable tactics. Give them chaos instead. The first phase began exactly as planned. Human destroyers, moving in seemingly random patterns, penetrated the nebula's outer regions and began engaging swarm patrol units. The battles were vicious and brief. Human ships used kinetic weapons and chemical explosives against enemies that had never encountered such primitive technology. Lee watched tactical displays as his forces took devastating casualties while inflicting even worse damage on swarm units. A human frigate, its hull breached in 3 places, rammed directly into a swarm biocruiser and detonated its reactor core. Both ships vanished in expanding clouds of plasma and biological debris. Captain, his sensor operator reported, swarm forces are committing their reserves to the perimeter engagement. The facility core is reducing defensive coverage. Perfect. The enemy was reacting exactly as human tactical doctrine had predicted. The swarm's hive mind excelled at efficient resource allocation, but that same efficiency made them predictable to opponents who understood their behavioral patterns. Signal Phase 2. Commencement to all fleet elements, Lee ordered. Throughout the nebula, Confederacy and Vorthak ships began their approach toward the facility core. Admiral Corvin's flagship Harmony's Light led a formation of crystal-hulled vessels that used their natural prismatic properties to bend sensor beams around them. General Makarov's battle group employed aggressive ramming tactics that would have been considered insane by traditional military standards, but it was Commander Vex's Insectoid Union, forces that truly embraced human combat philosophy. Their ships, naturally designed for swarm tactics, adapted quickly to controlled chaos doctrine. Individual vessels broke formation to pursue targets of opportunity, while maintaining awareness of overall mission objectives. Lee felt proud satisfaction as he watched alien crews fighting with human determination. They were learning that survival sometimes required abandoning civilized restraint. "Captain, we are receiving distress calls from multiple sources within the facility," his communications officer reported. "Sounds like prisoner populations requesting immediate extraction." Lee studied the tactical situation. Rescuing captives would require ships to enter the most heavily defended areas of the facility, where swarm bioweapons could dissolve hull plating in minutes. "All ships with rescue capability, begin prisoner extraction operations," he commanded. "Priority targets are species with tactical or technical knowledge." What followed was unlike anything in recorded military history. Ships designed for peaceful exploration transformed themselves into desperate rescue vehicles. Their crews risked everything to save beings they had never met. A Confederacy research vessel, its shields failing under swarm acid bombardment, managed to extract 300 prisoners before sacrificing itself to cover their evacuation. Lieutenant Song Hyun's reconnaissance ship, Soul's Shadow, penetrated deepest into the facility core. She used stealth technology that rendered it nearly invisible to swarm sensors. Her mission was the most critical: locating and destroying the genetic template storage that represented millions of years of evolutionary adaptation. "Captain, I am receiving tactical data from Lieutenant Song," his sensor operator reported. "She has found the primary biotower, transmitting targeting coordinates now." The coordinates appeared on Lee's tactical display deep within a maze of organic structures that pulsed with defensive systems. Reaching the target would require ships to navigate through concentrated swarm defenses while avoiding bioweapons that could consume any known hull material. "This is Captain Lee to all fleet elements," he announced. "Primary target coordinates are now available. All ships capable of independent action are authorized to attempt runs on the biotower. Use any tactics necessary." What happened next challenged everything the galactic military academies taught about proper warfare. Individual ships operating without coordination or support launched desperate attacks against seemingly impossible odds. A Vorthak heavy cruiser, its engines destroyed and life support failing, used its remaining maneuvering thrusters to position itself for a collision course with the biotower's defensive grid. Commander Vex's flagship, surrounded by swarm biofighters, deliberately vented its atmosphere to create a propulsion effect that carried it past enemy defenses long enough to deliver a devastating kinetic bombardment against the tower's base structure. But it was engineer Choi Ji-won who achieved the breakthrough. Her modified research vessel, Busan's Hope, had been equipped with experimental penetration technology, designed specifically for this mission. Using a combination of human engineering and captured swarm biomaterials, she had created weapons that could function within the tower's defensive systems. "Captain Lee, this is Engineer Choi," came the transmission from deep within enemy territory. "I'm inside the biotower. The genetic template storage is more extensive than we anticipated." Lee's tactical display showed Choi's position, surrounded by hostile bioforms in the heart of the swarm's most critical facility. "Engineer, what is your assessment?" "Sir, destroying this facility will cripple swarm adaptive capacity for decades, but the explosion will be significant. Any ships within 50 kilometers will be caught in the biomatter cascade." Lee understood immediately. The weapon required to destroy the genetic templates would create a chain reaction that would consume everything in the surrounding area. This included most of the rescue ships still extracting prisoners. "How long do we have?" he asked. "I need 12 minutes to properly configure the charges. Evacuation should begin immediately." Lee looked around his bridge at crew members who had volunteered for what everyone knew might be a suicide mission. They had all understood the risks, but the reality of sacrifice was always different from theoretical preparation. "All ships, this is Captain Lee. General evacuation order is now in effect. Rescue operations have 12 minutes to reach minimum safe distance." The next 12 minutes tested human military doctrine to its absolute limits. Ships that had been engaged in desperate battles suddenly had to coordinate massive evacuation efforts while under constant enemy fire. Crews pushed their vessels beyond rated capabilities, using emergency overrides and improvised modifications to extract every possible. Survivor Lieutenant Song's stealth ship managed to rescue 4 separate groups of prisoners while providing tactical data for other evacuation efforts. Admiral Corvin's crystal ships used their natural optical properties to create confusion among swarm defenders, allowing smaller vessels to escape with rescued captives. With 30 seconds remaining, Engineer Choi transmitted her final message. "Captain Lee, charges are configured and ready for detonation. It has been an honor serving with the Defense Force. Engineer Choi, your sacrifice will be remembered by every species in the galaxy." "Sir, that is all any of us can ask for." The explosion, when it came, was visible from the outer edge of the nebula. The biotower's destruction created a cascade reaction that consumed swarm genetic templates accumulated over millions of years, along with the breeding facilities, defensive installations, and everything else within a 50-kilometer radius. In that moment, humanity proved to the galaxy that some victories require prices that civilized beings consider unacceptable. But they also proved that such victories are possible. Captain Lee watched the tactical display as swarm forces throughout the region began exhibiting signs of confusion and reduced coordination. Without their genetic templates, newly created swarm units lacked the adaptive capabilities that had made them nearly invincible. "All surviving vessels, this is Captain Lee," he announced to the remnant. Director Yoon Tae-young stood in the intelligence center aboard Earth's primary orbital station, watching holographic displays that showed the true scope of humanity's centuries-long preparation. The successful assault on the Kepler facility had bought them time, but intelligence analysis revealed the full magnitude of what lay ahead. "Director," reported his chief analyst, Dr. Park Sun-hee, "we have completed assessment of swarm activities across all monitored sectors. The situation is worse than our initial projections." The main display showed a galaxy-wide view with red zones indicating confirmed swarm presence. What had appeared to be isolated infestations were revealed as connected elements of a vast network spanning hundreds of star systems. 47 major breeding facilities, Dr. Park continued, 316 resource extraction sites, and an estimated 12,000 minor installations. Total swarm biomass is approaching critical threshold despite our recent success. Yoon studied the projections grimly. Humanity had spent 12 millennia preparing for this conflict, but even their most pessimistic scenarios had underestimated the enemy's scope. "What about our galactic allies?" he asked. "Mixed results. The joint operation demonstrated that other species can fight effectively using human doctrine, but casualty rates were significant. Several governments are questioning whether continued cooperation is sustainable." Yoon was not surprised. The galaxy's civilized species had built their entire cultures around avoiding the kind of warfare that humans considered routine. Asking them to sustain those losses repeatedly would test their resolve beyond reasonable limits. "Sir," another analyst reported, "we are receiving priority communications from Admiral Kang Seung-wan. He is requesting immediate conference with all military commanders." The holographic display shifted to show Admiral Kang aboard his flagship Seoul's Vengeance. His weathered features reflected the burden of command during humanity's greatest challenge. "Director Yoon," the Admiral began, "intelligence reports confirm what we suspected. The Kepler facility was significant but not unique. The swarm maintained similar installations throughout their territory. What are you recommending, Admiral? Total warfare. We have proven that individual facilities can be destroyed, but only through coordinated efforts that our allies may not be able to sustain. We need to consider alternatives." Yoon understood what the Admiral was not saying directly. Human military doctrine included options that their galactic allies would never accept. Strategies that prioritized species survival over individual conscience. Are you suggesting we proceed independently? Admiral Kang's expression was grim. I am suggesting we prepare for that possibility. Our allies fought bravely at Kepler, but asking them to repeat that sacrifice 46 more times. The communication was interrupted by an incoming priority signal from Dr. Kim Yuna aboard the diplomatic station New Harmony. Her expression showed the strain of managing unprecedented interspecies cooperation under desperate circumstances. Director Yoon, Admiral Kang, we have a situation. The Galactic Confederacy Council is meeting an emergency session to discuss alternatives to continued military cooperation. Yoon felt a familiar weight of responsibility. Throughout human history, the species had faced moments when survival required choices that tested fundamental values. What kind of alternatives? He asked. Negotiation with the swarm. Several council members believed that intelligent accommodation might be possible. Admiral Kang's expression darkened. Dr. Kim, we have studied swarm behavior for 3 years. They do not negotiate. They consume. I understand that, Admiral, but the Confederacy's losses at Kepler were substantial. They are looking for any option that does not require repeated sacrifices of that magnitude. Yoon reviewed intelligence files that contained information no galactic leader had ever seen. Humanity's deep space monitoring had tracked swarm behavior across multiple galaxies over thousands of years. Every species that had attempted negotiation had been consumed. Dr. Kim, what is your assessment of Confederacy resolve? Wavering. Admiral Corvin lost 60% of his fleet at Kepler. The Crystal People reproduce slowly, and those casualties represent generations of irreplaceable individuals. They are not sure they can sustain that level of warfare. And the other species? Similar concerns. The Vorthak Empire is willing to continue fighting, but only if they can maintain territorial integrity. The Insectoid Union lost 3 entire hive clusters and is reconsidering expansion beyond their core systems. Admiral Kang activated tactical displays showing current human force dispositions. Director, our independent capabilities are sufficient to continue operations, but without Allied support, our strategic options become limited. Yoon understood the implications. Humanity could fight the swarm alone, but victory would require tactics that galactic civilization would consider genocidal. Admiral, refresh my memory regarding Protocol 7. Admiral Kang's expression became carefully neutral. Protocol 7 involves complete sterilization of swarm-infected systems using weapons that our allies would consider unacceptable. Casualties? Total. Everything within targeted systems would be eliminated, including any surviving populations, infrastructure, or potential for future habitability. Dr. Kim's image showed horrified understanding. Director, you are talking about destroying entire star systems. That is not warfare. That is extinction-level tactics. Dr. Kim, what do you think the swarm represents? The question hung in the recycled air of the intelligence center. Everyone present understood that they were discussing the fundamental question of whether intelligent life would continue to exist in their galaxy. Sir, reported Dr. Park, we are receiving intelligence updates from deep space monitoring stations. Swarm expansion rate has accelerated following the Kepler engagement. They are apparently treating our victory as confirmation that they face a genuine threat. Yoon studied the projections showing swarm forces consolidating around critical installations while expanding into previously uninhabited systems. The enemy was learning, adapting, and preparing for larger-scale warfare. Director, Admiral Kang said quietly, we need to make a decision. If our allies withdraw from active cooperation, human forces will need to shift to independent operations, which means Protocol 7, which means survival tactics that other species will not approve of, but that may represent the only path to victory. Dr. Kim's transmission carried desperate urgency. Director, there has to be another option. Humanity cannot become the very thing we are fighting against. Yoon looked around the intelligence center at analysts who represented humanity's best understanding of galactic affairs. They had spent lifetimes studying other species, learning their strengths and weaknesses, preparing for the moment when human judgment might determine the fate of intelligent life. Dr. Kim, what makes you think we are becoming like the swarm? The willingness to eliminate entire systems, entire populations in pursuit of strategic objectives. The difference, Yoon said carefully, is that the swarm eliminates systems to consume them. We would eliminate systems to prevent consumption of everything else. He activated a holographic projection, showing humanity's deepest strategic analysis. Dr. Kim, we have modeled every possible scenario. Conventional warfare will not defeat the swarm. Negotiation will not succeed. Half measures will result in total galactic consumption. Then what are you suggesting? Admiral Kang answered. We are suggesting that humanity fulfills its historical role. We have always been the species that makes impossible choices so that others do not have to. By committing genocide. By ensuring survival, Yoon corrected. Dr. Kim, would you prefer that we preserve our moral purity while watching every intelligent species in the galaxy be converted into swarm biomass? The silence stretched across communication channels as the implications settled. This was the moment that 12,000 years of preparation had led to. The choice between civilized conduct and species survival. Director, Dr. Kim said finally, if humanity proceeds with Protocol 7, what happens to our relationship with galactic civilization? We become the monsters who save them, Admiral Kang answered. They will hate us, fear us, and spend the rest of their history ensuring that we never threaten them again. And we accept that outcome? Yoon looked out through the intelligence centers, viewports at the stars that contained billions of beings who had no idea their continued existence might depend on humanity's willingness to be hated. Dr. Kim, humanity learned long ago that sometimes being the hero means being willing to be the villain. He turned to Admiral Kang. Admiral, prepare Protocol 7 implementation plans. If our allies choose negotiation over warfare, human forces will proceed independently. Understood. Director, to Dr. Kim, he said, Doctor, use whatever influence you have to maintain Allied cooperation, but make it clear that with or without them, the swarm will be stopped. As communication channels closed, Yoon stood alone with the weight of decisions that would determine the future of galactic civilization. Humanity had always been willing to make impossible choices. Now they would discover whether the rest of the galaxy could live with the consequences. The holographic displays continued showing swarm expansion patterns, each red zone representing worlds that would be consumed if humanity hesitated. In the end, the choice was simple. Even if the emergency session of the Galactic Confederacy Council had been moved to the secured chambers aboard Universal Peace, the massive diplomatic station that orbited the neutral world of Concordia. Dr. Kim Yuna sat in the human delegation section, watching representatives from dozens of species debate humanity's ultimatum with growing desperation. Admiral Corbin's crystalline form had lost much of its natural brightness, a sign of deep exhaustion among his people. The losses at Kepler had shaken Confederacy leadership more deeply than anyone had anticipated. The humans' proposal is unacceptable, declared Ambassador Threllis, her aquatic form rippling with agitation. They are asking us to participate in the systematic destruction of entire star systems. They are asking us to survive, countered General Makarov, his reptilian features showing the strain of defending an increasingly unpopular position. My intelligence services confirm human assessment. Conventional warfare cannot defeat the swarm. Counselor Varen of the Peaceful Alliance rose to address the chamber. His ethereal form glowed with moral certainty. There must be alternative solutions. Perhaps if we approach the swarm with offers of coexistence. The chamber erupted in voices from multiple species. Some supported negotiation attempts, while others demanded continued military action. Dr. Kim watched the debate with growing certainty that galactic civilization was about to make a catastrophic mistake. Council members, she said, activating the human delegation's speaking platform. The chamber gradually quieted as representatives turned their attention to the species that had thrust them into this impossible situation. I understand. Your concerns about humanity's proposed tactics, she continued. They violate every principle of civilized warfare that your species have developed over thousands of years of peaceful cooperation. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. But I need you to understand something about human history, she said, turning on holographic displays that showed Earth's ancient past. We developed those tactics because our world taught us that survival sometimes requires choices that peaceful beings cannot contemplate. The displays showed footage from humanity's bloodiest conflicts, scenes of warfare that made even hardened military commanders uncomfortable. This is not who we want to be, Dr. Kim said quietly. But this is who we become when extinction is the alternative. Ambassador Threllis spoke up. Dr. Kim, surely you can see that adopting such methods makes us no better than the enemy we are fighting. Ambassador, the enemy wants to convert your entire species into digestive matter. We want to ensure your species continues to exist. If you cannot see the difference, then you are not qualified to make decisions about survival. The bluntness of her statement shocked the chamber into silence. Galactic diplomatic protocol discouraged such direct confrontation. Dr. Kim, Admiral Corvin's voice carried the weight of recent losses. The Confederacy lost over 300,000 individuals at Kepler. We cannot sustain such casualties repeatedly. Admiral, if the Confederacy chooses negotiation with the Swarm, you will lose every individual in your civilization, not as casualties of war but as raw materials for enemy expansion. She turned on intelligence displays showing Swarm behavior patterns that humanity had been observing for centuries. The Swarm has encountered over 400 intelligent species in the past 10,000 years. Every species that attempted negotiation was completely consumed. Every species that adopted conventional military resistance was completely consumed. Only species that adopted tactics similar to what we are proposing have achieved survival. Counselor Varen's ethereal form pulsed with confused light. You are saying that other species have faced this threat before? We are saying that the Swarm is not unique to this galaxy. Humanity has encountered similar entities in other regions of space. We know how this story ends if you choose civilized resistance. The revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. Representatives had assumed that the consuming Swarm was a localized phenomenon. General Makarov leaned forward with professional interest. Dr. Kim, are you telling us that humanity has fought entities like the Swarm before? We are telling you that humanity has been preparing for entities like the Swarm for 12,000 years. This is not our first encounter with existential threats that require extreme measures. Turned on displays showing human deep space installations that had been hidden from galactic sensors for thousands of years. These are not exploration bases or research facilities. They are military installations designed specifically for warfare against entities that conventional tactics cannot defeat. The scope of humanity's hidden preparations was staggering. Weapons platforms that could sterilize entire star systems. Manufacturing facilities that could produce fleets of expendable warships. And strategic reserves that dwarfed anything the galaxy's civilized species had ever contemplated. Admiral Corvin's crystalline form went completely transparent with shock. Dr. Kim, the scale of military preparation you are showing us represents resources equivalent to entire galactic economies. Admiral, it represents 12,000 years of choosing preparation over prosperity, survival over comfort, and strategic necessity over moral preferences. Ambassador Threllis spoke with growing horror. You have been planning for galactic warfare for thousands of years. What does that make humanity? Dr. Kim's expression was completely serious. It makes us the species that will still exist when this crisis ends. She gestured to displays showing Swarm expansion projections. Council members, you have approximately 6 hours to make your decision. After that, human forces will proceed with independent operations regardless of your choice. And if we choose to attempt negotiation? Counselor Varen asked. Then you choose extinction, Dr. Kim replied. But you choose it with clean consciences. The debate that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Species that had cooperated peacefully for thousands of years found themselves confronting fundamental questions about survival, morality, and the price of continued existence. Some delegations argued for maintaining civilized principles regardless of consequences. Others demanded practical solutions that prioritize survival over moral purity. The chamber divided along lines that had never existed before, those willing to accept human methods and those who preferred extinction to compromise. Admiral Corvin finally called for formal voting procedures. Council members, the question before us is simple. Do we authorize continuation of joint military operations using human tactical doctrine? Or do we pursue alternative solutions? The vote, when it came, split the galactic community more decisively than any issue in recorded history. The Galactic Confederacy, the Aquatic Collective, and the Peaceful Alliance voted to pursue negotiation with the Swarm. The Vorthak Empire, the Insectoid Union, and several smaller species voted to continue military cooperation with humanity. They Result left galactic civilization divided at the moment when unity was most critical. Dr. Kim stood to address the chamber one final time. Council members, humanity respects your decision. Those species that choose continued military cooperation will have our full support. Those that choose negotiation, we wish you success, but we will not be able to protect you from the consequences. She activated her communicator to contact Director Yoon Tae-young on Earth. Director, Council voting is complete. We have partial cooperation from several species, but majority opinion favors attempting negotiation with the swarm. Yoon's voice carried the weight of final decision. Dr. Kim, inform our allies that human military operations will proceed according to Protocol 7. Any species that wishes to participate is welcome. Any species that prefers negotiation is free to make that attempt. Director, are you authorizing independent operations? Dr. Kim, I am authorizing whatever operations are necessary to ensure that intelligent life survives in this galaxy. If that requires humanity to act alone, then humanity will act alone. The communication ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Representatives from dozens of species had just witnessed the moment when humanity chose species survival over galactic unity. Admiral Corvin's crystalline form reflected the chambers, lighting in patterns of deep uncertainty. Dr. Kim, what happens now? She looked around the chamber at beings who represented thousands of years of peaceful cooperation. Beings who were about to discover that peace is a luxury that extinction-level threats do not permit. Now, Admiral, we find out whether civilization can survive contact with reality. Outside the diplomatic station, human fleets were already moving toward their first Protocol 7 target. A star system where the swarm had established major breeding facilities and where negotiation was not an option. The galaxy was about to learn what humans meant. When they said whatever is necessary, Dr. Kim gathered her materials and prepared to leave the chamber. Half the galaxy had just chosen to trust in negotiation with an enemy that had never negotiated. The other half had chosen to follow humanity into a war that would require them to become something they had never been before. As she walked toward the exit, she could hear the continuing debates behind her. Representatives were already discussing how to approach the swarm with offers of peaceful coexistence. They would learn soon enough that the swarm had only one response to such. Captain Lee Dae-hyun stood on the observation deck of the Incheon's Pride, looking out at what had once been the Vega system. Where 5 inhabited worlds had once orbited a stable star, only expanding clouds of plasma marked humanity's application of Protocol 7 tactics. The swarm breeding facility that had threatened 3 entire sectors was gone, along with everything else within a 10-light-year radius. Captain, reported his communications officer, we are receiving status updates from all Protocol 7 sites. 17 star systems have been successfully sterilized. Swarm presence in affected regions has been reduced to 0. Lee nodded grimly. Humanity's independent campaign had been devastatingly effective, but the cost extended far beyond military casualties. Each sterilized system had once contained civilizations, ecosystems, and possibilities that would never exist again. Any word from the negotiation attempts? He asked. Sir, the Aquatic Collective's diplomatic mission was consumed 3 days ago. Ambassador Threllis and her entire delegation were converted to swarm biomass. The Peaceful Alliance's negotiation fleet met a similar fate last week. Lee had expected those results. Humanity's intelligence services had tracked over 400 previous attempts at negotiation with swarm entities. None had ever succeeded, but galactic species had needed to learn that truth for themselves. Captain, priority communication. From Earth. Director Yoon requests immediate conference with all senior commanders. The holographic display activated to show Director Yoon Tae-young in the intelligence center that had become humanity's de facto command center for galactic operations. His expression carried the weight of decisions that no human leader had ever been forced to make. Captain Lee, what is the status of swarm resistance in your operational area? Director, swarm forces in the Outer Rim sectors have been completely eliminated. We estimate that Protocol 7 operations have reduced total swarm biomass by approximately 40%. Casualties? Minimal human losses. The sterilization weapons do not require close-range engagement. Yoon's expression showed the moral burden that success had brought. Humanity had proven that the swarm could be defeated, but only through methods that civilized species considered unacceptable. Director? Lee continued. We are receiving communication requests from surviving galactic governments. They want to discuss renewed cooperation. I imagine they do. Dr. Kim's diplomatic reports indicate that species which chose negotiation are beginning to understand their mistake. The display shifted to show Dr. Kim Yuna aboard the diplomatic station New Harmony. Her appearance reflected months of managing unprecedented interspecies crisis. Director Captain Lee, she began, the political situation has changed dramatically. The Galactic Confederacy's negotiation attempts resulted in complete loss of their diplomatic fleet and 3 core worlds. They are requesting immediate military assistance. Lee studied tactical displays showing remaining swarm concentrations. Dr. Kim, human forces can eliminate remaining swarm installations within 60 days. But our allies need to understand that this means accepting Protocol 7 tactics for all remaining operations. They understand. Admiral Corvin personally communicated that the Confederacy will accept any tactics necessary for survival. Director Yoon activated strategic projections showing the post-war galaxy. Dr. Kim, what about long-term political relationships? How do our allies view humanity after witnessing Protocol 7 implementation? Dr. Kim's expression was carefully neutral. They view us as necessary monsters. They are grateful for survival, but they are also terrified of what we represent. And their long-term plans? Complete isolation from human territories once the swarm threat ends. They want our protection from existential threats, but they do not want cultural contact with a species capable of systematic star system destruction. Lee had expected this outcome. Throughout human history, those who made impossible choices for the greater good were rarely thanked by those they saved. Director, are we prepared for galactic isolation? Captain, we have been preparing for exactly that outcome for 12,000 years. Yoon activated displays showing humanity's true territorial extent. Not just the Sol system, but hidden colonies and installations throughout regions of space that other species had never explored. Humanity never intended to become a galactic power, he explained. We always knew that our methods of survival would be incompatible with civilized species. Our goal was ensuring that intelligent life continued to exist, not that other species appreciated our methods. Dr. Kim added context from her diplomatic perspective. The surviving species are already discussing containment strategies. They want to ensure that humanity remains isolated to specific regions of space. And our response? Captain Lee asked. Director Yoon's expression was completely serious. Our response is to complete elimination of the swarm threat, followed by voluntary withdrawal to predetermined territories. Humanity will continue monitoring galactic affairs, but we will not seek integration with civilized society. Director, Lee said, that sounds like permanent exile. Captain, it sounds like the natural conclusion of a species that chose survival over acceptance. The holographic display shifted to show Admiral Kang Sungwon from his flagship. His weathered features reflected the burden of commanding humanity's most successful and most criticized military campaign. Director, Captain Dr. Kim, the Admiral began, final swarm installations have been located and targeted. We can complete Protocol 7 operations within 30 days. Total galactic sterilization will require destruction of 12 additional star systems. The numbers represented billions of potential lives, countless ecosystems and astronomical resources that could have supported civilization for thousands of years. Admiral, Director Yoon said quietly, proceed with operations. Humanity will bear responsibility for whatever costs are necessary. Understood, Director. Dr. Kim spoke up. Director, I need to ask, was this always the plan? Did humanity always intend to become the galaxy's designated monster? Yoon looked out through the Intelligence Center's viewports at stars that contained species who would live because of human choices they could never forgive. Dr. Kim, humanity learned 12,000 years ago that someone has to be willing to make the choices that civilized beings cannot make. Someone has to be willing to be hated so that others can survive with clean consciences. And we chose that role. We chose survival. For everyone. The final month of the Swarm War proceeded exactly as human projections had predicted. Protocol 7 operations eliminated remaining swarm installations with methodical efficiency. 12 star systems were sterilized. Their matter converted to expanding plasma clouds that would eventually cool into resource-rich nebulae for future civilizations to utilize. When the last swarm bioship was destroyed, Galactic civilization was safe, but the price had been paid by a species that would now be feared, isolated, and remembered as necessary saviors who could never be trusted again. Captain Lee Dae-hyun stood on his observation deck, watching human fleets begin their withdrawal to predetermined territories. Around them, the galaxy was already rebuilding. Civilized species cooperated to restore what had been damaged, carefully avoiding any territory that humanity might claim. He activated his personal communicator to contact his family on Earth. "This is Captain Lee. Operation complete. Coming home." His daughter's voice came through the channel, bright with the innocence that 12,000 years of human sacrifice had preserved. "Dad, did you save the galaxy?" Lee looked out at stars that would continue shining because humanity had been willing to be hated. "Yes, little one. We saved the galaxy. Are you heroes?" Lee thought about the question that would define humanity's legacy among the stars. They had saved intelligent life through methods that intelligent life could not accept. They had preserved civilization by acting outside civilized boundaries. They had become legends again, but legends that other species would tell their children as warnings rather than inspiration. "We are humans," he said finally. "That is enough." As the human fleets disappeared into hyperspace, heading home to territories that would remain isolated from galactic civilization, the species they had saved began the work of ensuring such salvation would never again be necessary. And in the dark spaces between the stars, humanity resumed its ancient watch, ready to emerge again if the galaxy ever needed monsters to fight its nightmares. Some legends, after all, are too important to remain myths.